Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Now, this one was quite interesting because in the wake of the reveal, obviously, we then got the ProRes version of the Mark Cerny reveal, but Sony also shared with us some additional B-roll, including a 7-minute ProRes clip of Rebirth, which we spun out into a video, which excited a lot of people because, well, it's one of those games where the base PlayStation 5 version of the game in performance mode actually had some pretty profound quality issues, which the PlayStation 5 Pro cleans up immensely so. But at the same time, we only had that 7 minutes of footage. We hadn't been hands-on. We hadn't been interactive with the experience, but that changes now. So I'm curious as to whether any of your sort of observations have changed or evolved having gone hands-on.
I would say that it is a little bit more similar to The Last of Us there, where it is extremely detailed, like we saw in that preview footage. It is extremely detailed, but it's a little bit unstable relative to like a native 4K render with TAA. And in person, when you actually have control over the camera, and again, when you're able to like kind of propel the character through that scene and see more of that breakup across an area of the image over time, you do notice that a bit more here, I would say, especially in like the foliage. There's also some like distant geometric elements that I saw in the area that I was looking at in, I think, chapter 3, like cliff faces where the resolve could look a little bit weird. But measured up against the original game in the performance mode, I think that the image stability is probably fine enough again. And obviously you do get an enormous amount of detail. One issue with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth that has not been improved here is that the LOD popping does create its own image stability issues, which are also significant. So that's another thing to factor in, of course. That's to say that not all of the image instability that you might notice is from PSSR here. It's from possibly that underlying issue with the LODs here. And I spoke to a representative at the booth, and interestingly, obviously I had speculated maybe what they could do at 30 FPS here. But like with The Last of Us, it's basically just a pro-enhanced mode here, which is targeting 4K 60. That's all they're doing here. It uses the same underlying visual settings they said as the graphics mode, which we did also kind of speculate in our footage based off of what we had, in our preview based on what we had. I think that's sensible enough here. I don't think that everyone needs to go all out and do a 30 FPS mode. If they don't want to do it, if they don't think it's worthwhile, I think in many games it's not going to be worthwhile in PS5 Pro to do a 30 FPS mode, because when you're dealing with a very high quality image at 4K 60 like we generally are here, kind of what's the point? Unless you have additional ray tracing to throw on there that's already, on PS5 or on PC or something that you could kind of throw in there and improve, then what's the point? I mean, you could improve some settings in a more minor way, like with the LODs here, but I don't think that's that huge of an improvement personally. But yeah, I hope image quality can be improved maybe a little bit from here. Maybe they can get some new versions of PSSR in there, possibly as the model evolves. Overall, though, very strong showing. Relative to the PS5, it is a world apart. I did feel like my coverage was validated to a significant degree by this showing. But also, I would say that when you do actually have camera control and you are looking at the image closely, you do spot some of those artifacts a little bit more than you do in kind of this pre-provided B-roll with the camera kind of moving all over the place and lots of action. You notice it a bit more in person, but it's not too bad. It looks pretty good.
Okay, so to be clear here, the 30 FPS quality mode is just absent?
I believe so. I believe it's just the 60 FPS mode on PS5. I don't think they're doing the same thing with keeping the old modes around. But
right.
I mean, I don't think so. I don't think there's any point to that, but I guess we'll have to see.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because if they did keep them around, there's the very real possibility that the performance mode is just going to be better than the quality mode, in which case, can you actually call it a quality mode anymore? It just doesn't really make sense, does it?